I always thought I had a solid marriage. Angelica and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7, and things seemed pretty smooth on the surface. We did not have any kids, which was a mutual decision, partly because we both loved our careers, and partly because we enjoyed our freedom. I worked in finance, and my job demanded a lot of traveling. Angelica worked as a marketing executive for a well-known firm, and her job kept her busy too. At first, the time apart felt like a minor inconvenience, something we would work around. We would catch up over the phone or during weekends when I was home. But gradually, the distance between us started to grow in more ways than one. I guess I was too wrapped up in my own world to notice the cracks forming. Angelica was always confident, maybe too confident for her own good. She had this air of superiority about her, always needing to be the center of attention. It was one of the things that drew me to her initially, her self-assuredness. But over time, that confidence turned into arrogance, and she became increasingly demanding and narcissistic. I chalked it up to stress at work and did my best to support her, thinking it was just a phase. I had no idea that her late nights and weekend meetings were more than just work commitments. Angelica always had an excuse, a perfectly plausible reason for being out late or traveling for conferences. She would come home with tales of high-stakes meetings and big deals, and I believed every word. Why would not I? She had always been good at her job, and I trusted her. One evening, while I was in Chicago for a conference, I got a call from my buddy, Dave. He had been friends with Angelica and me for years and worked in the same building as Angelica. He sounded hesitant, almost awkward, which was unlike him. "Hey man, I do not know how to say this, but I saw Angelica today," Dave said. "Yeah? How's she doing?" I asked, not sensing anything amiss. "She was with some guy. They seemed pretty close. It looked like more than just colleagues, you know?" I laughed it off. "Come on, Dave. Angelica has got a lot of guy friends at work. You know how it is." "Yeah, I know, but this felt different. I just thought you should know." I thanked Dave and hung up, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I tried to push it aside, convincing myself that Dave was mistaken. But a part of me started paying more attention, noticing little things that seemed off. Angelica's increased secrecy, her defensive attitude when I asked about her day, the way she always had her phone glued to her hand. When I got back home, I decided to keep a closer eye on things. I did not want to believe that Angelica could be cheating on me, but something just did not feel right. The more I observed, the more suspicious I became. There were too many late-night texts, hushed phone calls, and unexplained absences. One night, after Angelica had gone to bed, I decided to check her phone. I felt like a sleazy detective in one of those bad movies, but I needed to know. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her messages. Most of it was work-related. But then I found a conversation with a guy named Mike. The messages were flirtatious, full of inside jokes and plans to meet up. My stomach churned as I read through them. The next day, I confronted Angelica. She was in the kitchen making coffee when I walked in. I could barely contain my anger. "Angelica, who the hell is Mike?" I demanded. She looked up, surprised, but not flustered. "Mike? He is just a colleague. Why?" "Just a colleague?" These messages do not sound like they are just from a colleague. Her expression changed, becoming defensive. "Are you seriously going through my phone now? That is a new low, even for you." "I had to, Angelica. You have been acting weird, and Dave saw you with this guy." "Oh, so now you're spying on me too? How pathetic can you get?" I could feel my blood boiling. "Just tell me the truth. Are you seeing him?" She crossed her arms and scoffed. "You are being ridiculous. Mike is just a friend. We hang out sometimes, but it is nothing. You are away so much, and I need someone to talk to. Maybe if you were around more, you would not have to worry." I wanted to believe her, but something in her tone, that smug, self-assured tone, told me she was lying. But without more proof, I could not push it further. I decided to bide my time and gather evidence. Little did I know, I was about to uncover more than I ever wanted to know. After that confrontation, things between Angelica and me were tense. She noticed that I was growing suspicious and started to be very careful. Her phone was always locked with a new passcode, and she made sure to keep it on her at all times. She also became more cautious with her explanations, offering elaborate details about her work and social activities, trying to make everything seem perfectly normal. Despite her efforts, I could not shake off the feeling that something was seriously wrong. It gnawed at me, keeping me up at night. I could not focus at work, and my mind kept drifting back to Angelica and this mysterious Mike. I needed more evidence, something concrete to confront her with. One Friday evening, I came home earlier than usual, hoping to catch Angelica off guard. She was in the living room, talking on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended the call and smiled, but it was strained. "Hey Karl, you are home early," she said, her voice overly cheerful. "Yeah, I finished up at the office sooner than expected." "Who were you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Oh, just Jenny from work. We were discussing some project details," she replied a little too quickly. I nodded, not buying it for a second. "Mind if I take a look at your phone? My battery is dead, and I need to make a quick call." Her eyes widened for a moment before she composed herself. "Sure, but it is almost dead too." She handed it over, and I pretended to scroll through it, knowing she had probably deleted anything incriminating. I needed a new plan. It was time to bring in some outside help. I called Dave the next day and asked him to meet me for coffee. He agreed, and we met at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown. "Dave, I need your help. I think Angelica is cheating on me, but I need proof," I said, feeling the weight of the words as I spoke them. Dave looked concerned. "What can I do?" "You work in the same building as her. Can you keep an eye on her? Maybe follow her if you see anything suspicious?" Dave hesitated but then nodded. "All right, I will do it. I do not like the idea of spying on her, but if it helps you figure things out, I am in." With Dave on board, I felt a glimmer of hope. Over the next few weeks, he kept tabs on Angelica, reporting back to me with what he observed. Angelica was good at covering her tracks, but there were still slip-ups. Dave saw her with Mike a few times, and it was clear from their body language that they were more than just colleagues. One evening, Dave called me with urgent news. "Karl, I saw Angelica and Mike heading into a hotel. I'm pretty sure something is going on. Do you want to come down here?" My heart raced. "Yes, text me the address. I will be there as soon as I can." I drove like a madman, my mind spinning with thoughts of what I might find. When I arrived, Dave was waiting for me outside the hotel. "They went in about 15 minutes ago. Room 302, he said, looking grim. I thanked him and headed inside, my hands shaking. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and stood outside room 302, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear muffled voices and laughter from inside. Summoning all my courage, I knocked on the door. The laughter stopped, and there was a moment of silence before the door opened. Angelica stood there, her face going pale when she saw me. Behind her, Mike looked just as shocked. "Karl, what are you doing here?" Angelica stammered, trying to block my view of the room. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice trembling with anger. Mike stepped forward, trying to play it cool. "Hey man, this is not what it looks like." "Oh really? Then what is it?" I snapped, pushing past Angelica and into the room. The sight that greeted me confirmed my worst fears. The bed was unmade, and there were 2 wine glasses on the nightstand. Angelica's purse and jacket were thrown carelessly on a chair. It was clear that they had been more than just talking. Angelica's demeanor changed in an instant. She went from shock to defensive, crossing her arms and glaring at me. "You had no right to come here, Karl. This is my life, and you cannot control me." "I am your husband. I deserve to know the truth," I shouted, the hurt and betrayal crashing over me. She scoffed. "Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of your job, we would not be in this mess." Mike stood there awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I think it is best if I leave. This is between you two." "Yeah, you do that," I said coldly, watching as he grabbed his jacket and left the room, not even bothering to look back. Once he was gone, I turned to Angelica. "How long has this been going on?" She rolled her eyes. "Does it matter? You are never around anyway. I need someone who is actually here for me." I could not believe what I was hearing. "So, you thought cheating was the answer? You could have talked to me, Angelica." "I tried, Karl, but you were always too busy." I shook my head, feeling the weight of her betrayal. "I cannot do this anymore. I am filing for divorce." Her eyes widened with genuine fear for the first time. "No, Karl, please, do not do this. We can work through it." But I was done. I had given her everything and she had thrown it all away. "I am done, Angelica. It is over." Angelica's pleading eyes were almost enough to break my resolve, but I knew I could not let her manipulate me any longer. As I turned to leave the hotel room, she grabbed my arm with a desperation that startled me. "Karl, please, you do not understand. It was a mistake, a stupid, horrible mistake. I love you, and I do not want to lose you," she said, her voice cracking with genuine emotion. I wrenched my arm free, my own emotions swirling inside me like a hurricane. "A mistake? Angelica, you have been lying to me for months. This is not just a one-time thing." She collapsed onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. I know, I was lonely and Mike was there. He listened when you would not. But it does not mean I do not love you." I stood there, torn between my anger and the lingering love I still felt for her. Love is not supposed to hurt like this. If you loved me, you would not have done this. Angelica looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Karl, give me another chance. I will do anything." Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, seeing a message from Dave. "Mike just drove off with a suitcase. Looks like he is running." A surge of vindictive satisfaction coursed through me. "Looks like your lover is ditching you, Angelica. Guess he was not that committed after all." She winced at my words, but then a new expression crossed her face, one of steely determination. "Fine. If you want a divorce, we will do it your way. But do not think I will make it easy for you." I left the hotel, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The drive home felt like a blur, and when I finally walked through the door, the silence of our house felt suffocating. Max, our dog, greeted me at the door, sensing something was wrong. I knelt down, burying my face in his fur, finding a small measure of comfort in his presence. Over the next few days, Angelica made good on her promise to fight me on the divorce. She hired a high-powered attorney and started making outrageous demands, trying to milk every last cent out of me. But I was not going down without a fight. I hired my own lawyer, determined to protect what was left of my dignity and assets. In the midst of the legal battle, I got another call from Dave. "Karl, you are not going to believe this. I just saw Mike again. He is back in town and looks like he is staying with someone." "Are you serious?" I asked, my anger flaring up again. "Do you know where?" "Yeah, he is at a friend's place on Oak Street. Want to pay him a visit?" I thought about it for a moment. Confronting Mike had not been part of my plan, but I needed answers. "Let us do it." That evening, Dave and I drove to the address he had given me. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where people mind their own business. We parked a few houses down and walked to the front door. I knocked, my heart pounding. Mike opened the door, his face falling when he saw us. "Karl, Dave, what are you doing here?" "I think you know why I'm here," I said, pushing past him into the house. "You thought you could just run away after ruining my marriage?" Mike raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Look, man, I did not mean for things to get this far. Angelica and I, it just happened." I clenched my fists, trying to keep my anger in check. "That is your excuse. It just happened? You do not get to destroy someone's life and then walk away." Dave stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "Mike, you need to come clean. Why did you come back?" Mike sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I came back because Angelica asked me to. She said she needed my help with something." "What could she possibly need your help with?" I demanded. He hesitated, then said, "She said she found something. Something about you, Karl. She was acting paranoid, like she was afraid of you." I stared at him in disbelief. "Afraid of me? She is the one who cheated. What could she possibly have found?" Mike shook his head. "I do not know, man, but she was convinced you were hiding something." Dave and I exchanged a look. This was getting weirder by the minute. "We need to find out what she's up to," Dave said. Back at the house, I searched through Angelica's things, looking for any clue as to what she might have found. Finally, in a drawer in her office, I found a folder labeled with my name. Inside were old documents, some from my past that I had forgotten about. Among them was a letter from an old girlfriend, dated years before I met Angelica. The letter mentioned a secret I had buried deep, something I had hoped to forget. I realized that Angelica had dug into my past, trying to use it against me. My hands shook as I read the words, the weight of the past crashing down on me. Angelica walked in, her face pale when she saw what I was holding. "Karl, it is not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice cold. "I was scared, okay? I thought you were hiding something from me. I thought if I could find out what it was, I could use it to keep you from leaving." "You were willing to destroy me to save your own skin," I said, the realization hitting me hard. She started to cry, but I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. "I cannot do this anymore, Angelica. You have gone too far." She reached out, but I stepped back. "Please, Karl, do not leave me. We can fix this. We can go back to how things were." But I knew there was no going back. "It is over, Angelica. You need help, and I cannot be the one to save you." The next day I filed for divorce, determined to put an end to this nightmare. But I knew that with Angelica, nothing would ever be that simple. The battle was just beginning, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. Filing for divorce felt like the first step toward reclaiming my life, but it also marked the beginning of a long and grueling battle. Angelica was not going to let go easily. True to her word, she fought me at every turn, using every trick in the book to try and squeeze as much out of me as possible. The house, the cars, even Max. It felt like nothing was off limits. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings, court appearances, and tense encounters with Angelica. She played the victim perfectly, painting me as the neglectful husband who drove her into another man's arms. It was infuriating. But I kept my cool, determined to see this through. One evening, after another exhausting day in court, I came home to find Dave waiting for me on the porch. He had a look on his face that told me something was up. "Hey man," he said as I approached. "Got some news you might want to hear." I sighed, too tired to care about more drama. "What now?" "Mike showed up at my office today. He looked pretty shaken up and wanted to talk." I frowned. "What did he want?" "He said Angelica's been acting really strange lately, even more than usual. He thinks she might be up to something dangerous." My heart sank. "Dangerous? Like what?" Dave shrugged. He did not have details, but he was genuinely worried. Said she's been talking to some shady characters. A chill ran down my spine. As much as I despised Angelica for what she had done, I did not want her to get hurt, or to hurt anyone else. We need to find out what she is up to. That night, Dave and I decided to keep an eye on Angelica, hoping to uncover whatever she was planning. We took turns following her, watching her movements closely. She was indeed meeting with some suspicious-looking people, exchanging envelopes and having hushed conversations in dark corners of the city. It was clear she was up to no good, but we could not figure out exactly what she was doing. One night, while I was tailing her, I saw her enter a dingy bar on the outskirts of town. I parked my car a block away and followed her inside, keeping my distance. The bar was crowded and noisy, filled with smoke and the smell of cheap beer. I spotted Angelica at a corner table, talking to a man I recognized from our earlier surveillance. I edged closer, trying to hear their conversation over the din of the bar. "It is all set," the man was saying. "You just need to follow through with your end of the deal." Angelica nodded, her expression cold and calculating. "Do not worry. I will take care of it." I could not hear the rest, but it was enough to send alarm bells ringing in my head. What was she planning? I needed to find out before it was too late. I waited until she left the bar, then followed her back to her apartment. Once she was inside, I called Dave. "We need to talk," I said, my voice urgent. We met at a diner, where I filled him in on what I had heard. "I do not know what she is planning, but it sounds serious." Dave looked grim. "We need to get ahead of this. Maybe we should go to the police." I nodded. "You are right. Let us do it." The next day, we went to the police with everything we had. They listened carefully, taking our concerns seriously. They agreed to keep an eye on Angelica and investigate her dealings. Days turned into weeks, and the tension kept mounting. Angelica continued to act suspiciously, but we could not pin down exactly what she was up to. Then, one evening, everything came to a head. I was at home, going through some documents for the divorce case, when my phone rang. It was Dave. "Karl, you need to get down to the police station, now." I drove there as fast as I could, my heart pounding with anxiety. When I arrived, Dave was waiting outside, looking more stressed than I had ever seen him. "They arrested Angelica," he said without preamble. "What? Why?" I asked, stunned. "She was caught trying to hire someone to hurt you. They have her on tape, Karl. She was planning something really bad." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. Are you serious? Dave nodded. Yeah. The police set up a sting operation. She is in custody now. Inside the station, the officers played back the recording for me. Hearing Angelica's voice, so cold and calculating, planning to have me harmed, was like a punch to the gut. I could not believe it. The woman I had loved and trusted was willing to go to such lengths to get what she wanted. The police assured me that Angelica would be facing serious charges and that I was safe. But the sense of betrayal cut deep. I had thought the cheating was the worst of it, but this was on a whole new level. In the days that followed, the story of Angelica's arrest made headlines. Friends and colleagues reached out, shocked and sympathetic, as I tried to process everything. The divorce proceedings continued, but now they were overshadowed by the criminal case against Angelica. It was a media circus, with reporters camped outside my house and every detail of our lives splashed across the front pages. Through it all, Dave remained my rock, helping me navigate the chaos. "You are going to get through this, Karl," he said one night as we sat in my living room, surrounded by legal documents and news clippings. "You are stronger than you think." I nodded, trying to believe him. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was done being Angelica's victim. It was time to rebuild my life, piece by piece, and leave the past behind. Angelica's arrest turned my life upside down, but it was also a strange kind of relief. For the first time in months, I felt like I was gaining some control over my life. The court dates for both the divorce and the criminal case loomed ahead, but I was ready to face them. Little did I know, the storm was far from over. A week after Angelica's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. I was at home, sorting through the mountains of paperwork that had taken over my dining table, when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found myself face to face with Mike. His normally smug expression was replaced with one of genuine fear. "Karl, can we talk?" he asked, glancing around nervously. I was tempted to slam the door in his face, but curiosity got the better of me. "Fine, come in." We sat in the living room, the tension between us palpable. Mike wasted no time getting to the point. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I think you should know that Angelica is not done. She has friends on the outside, people who are willing to do her dirty work." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "She made it clear that if anything happened to her, she had plans in place. People who would come after you. She's vindictive, Karl. She wants to ruin you, no matter what it takes." It was hard to believe, but given everything that had happened, it was not completely out of the realm of possibility. "Why are you telling me this now?" Mike looked down, shame etched on his face. "Because I was part of it. I was supposed to help her, but I cannot do it anymore. She has gone too far. I need your help to stop her." My instincts screamed to throw him out, but his fear seemed genuine. "What exactly did she plan?" Mike explained that Angelica had enlisted the help of a few unsavory characters to sabotage my career, ruin my reputation, and even threaten my life. She had built a network of people who owed her favors, and she was ready to cash them in. "She has a file on you, Karl. Everything you have ever done, every mistake, every secret. She planned to use it all," Mike said, his voice trembling. I felt a mix of anger and helplessness. "Why did you agree to this?" "At first it was about the money and the thrill, but now I see what a monster she is. I want to make things right." We needed proof, and fast. Mike suggested we break into Angelica's apartment, where she kept her files. It was a risky move, but we had no other choice. That night, we made our move. Mike knew the security codes and the layout, making it easier than I expected. We found the files hidden in a secret compartment in her closet. As I flipped through the pages, my heart sank. She had meticulously documented everything about me, even things I had long forgotten. We took the files and left, heading straight to Dave's place. He was shocked when we showed him what we had found. "This is insane. We need to take this to the police." The next morning, we handed over the files to the authorities, who promised to investigate. It felt like a small victory, but I knew it was not over yet. Angelica's trial was approaching, and with the new evidence, her case was looking worse by the day. As the trial date arrived, the courtroom was packed. Angelica sat there, her once confident demeanor replaced with a cold, calculating stare. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Then, just as the prosecution was about to rest their case, a new witness was called to the stand. Someone I never expected to see. It was Jenny, Angelica's co-worker. She nervously took her place, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "I have information about Angelique Tomfest," she began, her voice shaking. "She tried to get me involved in her plans. She wanted me to help frame Karl for embezzlement at his company. She said she would pay me handsomely if I did it." The courtroom erupted in whispers. This was a game changer. Angelica's lawyer tried to discredit Jenny, but her testimony was solid. It was the final nail in the coffin. The jury did not take long to reach a verdict, guilty on all charges. Angelica was sentenced to several years in prison for conspiracy, attempted assault, and fraud. As they led her away, she shot me one last venomous look, but it did not matter anymore. She was out of my life for good. The days following the trial were a whirlwind. The media frenzy died down, and I began the slow process of rebuilding my life. The divorce was finalized quickly, given the circumstances, and I was granted full ownership of our house and custody of Max. One evening, as I was sitting on the porch with Max by my side, Dave joined me. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset. "You did it, Karl. You made it through." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in months. "Yeah, thanks for being there, Dave. I could not have done it without you." He smiled. "Anytime, buddy. Here is to a new beginning." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past was behind me, and for the first time in a long while, the future looked bright. With Angelica behind bars and the divorce finalized, I finally started to feel like I could move on. The ordeal had been exhausting, but I was determined to rebuild my life. I threw myself into my work, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy again. However, I quickly realized that the scars from the past would not fade so easily. One morning, as I was heading into the office, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, but picked up. "Hello? Karl, it's Jenny," came the nervous voice on the other end. "Jenny, what is going on?" I asked, surprised. I am sorry to bother you, but I think someone is following me," she said, her voice trembling. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Who is following you?" "I do not know. I have seen the same car parked outside my apartment several times now. And last night, someone knocked on my door and ran away before I could see who it was," she explained, her fear palpable. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Okay, Jenny, listen to me. Go to the police and tell them everything, and be careful." "Thank you, Karl. I just thought you should know," she said before hanging up. The rest of the day, I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. Despite Angelica being in prison, it seemed her reach extended further than I had anticipated. I decided to reach out to Dave, who had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal. "Hey Dave, we need to talk," I said when he answered. "Sure thing. Meet at the usual spot?" he replied. An hour later, we were sitting in our favorite diner, sipping coffee. I told him about Jenny's call, and his expression grew serious. "It sounds like Angelica still has some loyal friends on the outside. That is what I am afraid of. I thought this was over, but it seems like it is just beginning," I admitted, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Dave leaned back, deep in thought. "We need to figure out who is behind this. Maybe Mike can help. He knows more about Angelica's network than anyone else." I nodded, knowing he was right. Despite everything, Mike had proven to be an ally when it mattered most. I called him later that day, explaining the situation. "Jenny's in trouble? Damn, I was afraid something like this might happen," Mike said, sounding genuinely concerned. "Do you have any idea who might be involved?" I asked. "There are a few people who owe Angelica favors. One of them is a guy named Tony. He is bad news, runs with a rough crowd," Mike explained. "Can you find out more?" I asked, hoping for a lead. "I will see what I can do. Just be careful, Karl. These people play dirty," Mike warned before hanging up. Days passed, and the tension only grew. I kept an eye on Jenny, making sure she was safe, and waited for Mike to come through with information. Then, one evening, my phone rang again. It was Mike. "I found out where Tony is staying. He has got a place on the outskirts of town. If we are going to confront him, now is the time," Mike said. All right, let us do it, I agreed, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Dave, Mike, and I drove to the address Mike had given us. The house was run down with a few dim lights shining through the windows. We parked a block away and approached cautiously. Stay behind me, Mike whispered, leading the way. We crept up to the house and Mike knocked on the door. After a tense moment, it swung open, revealing a burly man with a scowl on his face. What do you want? Tony growled. We need to talk, Mike said, his tone firm. Tony eyed us suspiciously but stepped aside, letting us in. The inside of the house was as shabby as the outside, cluttered with junk and reeking of stale beer. We followed Tony to a small, dimly lit room where he turned to face us. You got 5 minutes. Talk, he said, crossing his arms. We know you have been following Jenny. What do you want? Mike asked, getting straight to the point. Tony laughed, a harsh, grating sound. I do not know what you are talking about. Cut the crap, Tony. We know you are working for Angelica. She is in prison, but her reach is still long. What is the plan? Mike pressed, his voice steady. Tony's eyes narrowed. You think I am scared of you? Angelica promised me a lot if I took care of things for her, and I intend to collect. Not if we stop you first, Dave said, stepping forward. Tony smirked, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. You are making a big mistake. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Listen, Tony, this can end one of 2 ways. You back off, and we walk away, or you keep pushing and things get ugly. Do you really want to go down that path? For a moment, Tony seemed to consider his options. Then he sneered. You think you can scare me? I have been through worse. Before we could react, he lunged at Mike, and a chaotic struggle ensued. The room erupted in a flurry of fists and shouts. Dave and I jumped in, trying to subdue Tony. It was a brutal fight, but we managed to overpower him, pinning him to the ground. All right, I will back off, Tony finally shouted, realizing he was outnumbered. We stepped back, breathing heavily. You better keep your word, Mike warned, his eyes blazing with anger. Tony nodded, clearly shaken. Just leave me alone. We left the house, the adrenaline still pumping through our veins. Do you think he will really back off? I asked as we walked back to the car. He does not have a choice, Mike said, his voice grim. But we cannot let our guard down. Angelica's reach might be longer than we thought. As we drove home, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. The battle was far from over, but for now, we had gained a small victory. I just hoped it would be enough to keep Jenny and myself safe from Angelica's lingering wrath. Back at home, I checked in with Jenny, making sure she was all right. We confronted Tony. He promised to back off, I told her. Thank you, Karl. I do not know what I would have done without you, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. We will get through this, Jenny. We just have to stay strong, I assured her. As I hung up the phone, I knew the fight was not over. Angelica's influence might still be out there, but I was ready to face whatever came next. With the support of my friends, I was determined to protect my new life and leave the past behind for good. Despite our confrontation with Tony, I could not shake the feeling that we were still in danger. Angelica's network was like a hydra. Cutting off one head only seemed to reveal more. The days that followed were tense. I tried to focus on work and rebuilding my life, but there was always a shadow of fear looming over me. One evening, I got another call from Mike. Karl, we need to meet. It's urgent, he said, his voice tense. We met at a secluded park, far from prying eyes. Mike and Dave were already there when I arrived, both looking worried. What is going on? I asked, bracing myself for bad news. Mike handed me a folder. We found this in Tony's place after he backed off. It is worse than we thought. I opened the folder and felt my stomach drop. Inside were photos of Jenny, Dave, and even me, taken without our knowledge. There were notes detailing our routines, addresses, and even emergency contacts. Angelica's plan was far more extensive than we had imagined. She was preparing for anything, Dave said, shaking his head. She was not just trying to hurt you. She wanted to destroy everyone close to you. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. We need to go to the police again. They need to know everything. The police were just as shocked as we were. They assured us they would ramp up surveillance and take every precaution, but I could not shake the feeling of dread. Angelica might have been in prison, but her reach seemed endless. A few days later, I was at home when I heard a knock on the door. I peered through the peephole and saw a stranger, a tall man with a serious expression. Hesitant, I opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Mr. Tomfest, my name is Detective Harris. I am here to discuss the situation regarding your ex-wife," he said, showing me his badge. I let him in, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. We sat in the living room, and he got straight to the point. "We have been investigating Angelica's network, and it seems like she has more allies than we anticipated. We need your help to bring them down." "What do you need me to do?" I asked, determined to end this nightmare. "We need you to act as bait. We believe they will make another move soon, and we need to catch them in the act," Detective Harris explained. It was a risky plan, but I knew it might be our best chance. "All right, I will do it." The next few days were a blur of preparations. The police set up surveillance around my house and wired me with a hidden microphone. Mike and Dave were also briefed, ready to step in if things went south. Finally, the night came. I was at home, pretending to go about my usual routine. The tension was palpable, every noise making me jump. Then, just after midnight, I heard the unmistakable sound of a window breaking. I stayed calm, knowing the police were listening. Footsteps echoed through the house, getting closer. My heart pounded as I waited for the right moment. Suddenly, the door burst open and two men rushed in, their faces masked. "Where is it?" one of them demanded, grabbing me by the collar. "I do not know what you are talking about," I said, playing my part. "Do not lie to us," the other man shouted, shoving me against the wall. Before they could do anything else, the room was flooded with light as police officers stormed in. The men tried to fight back, but they were quickly subdued and handcuffed. Detective Harris stepped forward, giving me a nod of approval. "We got them, Karl. This should be the end of it," he said, his voice filled with relief. The men were taken away, and I finally allowed myself to breathe. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The police assured me they would continue to monitor any remaining threats, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. In the weeks that followed, the authorities dismantled what was left of Angelica's network. The men who had broken into my house provided valuable information, leading to several more arrests. It was a long and exhausting process, but we were finally making progress. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Max, Dave joined me, a bottle of beer in hand. "We did it, Karl. It is finally over," he said, handing me a bottle. I nodded, taking a sip. "Yeah, it feels good to finally have some peace." "Here's to new beginnings," Dave said, raising his bottle in a toast. We clinked our bottles together, the sense of relief almost overwhelming. The past few months had been a nightmare, but I had survived. With Angelica and her network dismantled, I could finally start to rebuild my life. In the following months, things slowly returned to normal. I focused on my work, spent time with friends, and even started dating again. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined me. I was ready to move forward, leaving Angelica and all her chaos behind. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset with Max by my side, I felt a sense of calm that had been missing for so long. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, knowing that I had the strength to overcome anything.